Welcome back. We start our news bulletin from Indian-occupied Kashmir, where occupation forces have martyred 4 more youths in Kulgam and Islamabad districts. In their fresh act of state terrorism, the occupying forces martyred the civilians in 2 different cordon and search operations in the districts. The troops martyred 2 youths at Nipora area of Kulgam and the 2 at Lalan area of the Islamabad district. The cordon and search operations are underway in the regions. The Indian police and troops have sealed all entry and exit points of the areas. The occupation authorities have also suspended internet service in the districts. The Indian forces have martyred 27 innocent Kashmiris during this month. Moving on, Nepal is set to pass its new map from the lower house to officially declare disputed areas with India as Nepalese territory. In a territorial controversy with India, Nepal published its new map showing Kalapani, Limpiadhura and Lupolakh as its areas. The vote on the second constitutional amendment is expected to get almost full support of the lower house, which has 275 members along with opposition support. The Madheshi party has also ensured its backing. Meanwhile, Nepalese forces killed 1 Indian citizen and arrested 3 others at its border with India's state of Bihar. 8 people have been killed in an attack in Afghanistan's eastern host province. Police said Abdul Wali Ikhlas, a Hizb-e-Islami member and former paramilitary candidate, was among those killed. A provincial police spokesperson said the attack took place near a clinic in Ali Sher district. He said the police are investigating the incident. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack. The worldwide death count from the new coronavirus has crossed 425,000, while infections have jumped over 7.6 million. Brazil has reported 909 more fatalities in the past 24 hours, taking the tally to nearly 42,000. In the US, 825 more people died overnight, while the countrywide death toll has reached over 114,000. Further details in this report.
Dozens of US states are grappling with the rising number of coronavirus patients filling hospital beds. Top US infectious disease official Anthony Fauci has cautioned that rising hospitalizations can get out of control in absence of vigorous tracing. Meanwhile, Brazil's COVID-19 death toll has overtaken that of the UK to become the second highest in the world after the US. The Mexico City's mayor said the capital will lift restrictions on traffic and public transport from the next week, despite over 500 new deaths in the country. In Chile, army has come out on streets to safeguard the coronavirus lockdowns and curfews in the country.
Our efforts to contain the virus have increased. After what we have seen, people are not respecting the quarantine, and in the last few weeks with the number of infections every day, controls are becoming more rigorous.
France says it will gradually reopen its borders with countries outside the Schengen zone from July 1st. Poland says it is also opening its borders for EU citizens starting from today following the COVID-19 lockdown. Britain's Transport Secretary has defended the country's quarantine, saying it was the right thing to be doing.
Been fighting this virus, getting the R number below 1. What we don't want to do is, end up sort of essentially re-importing it, either by people coming here or Brits going abroad and coming back. So I think the idea of quarantine is the right thing to be doing, and I note that it has broad public support.
In the meantime, Egypt and South Africa have reported the highest daily increase in coronavirus cases since the pandemic began in the region.
Pakistan has reported its highest number of new coronavirus infections in a single day. The Health Ministry reported nearly 6,500 new infections, exceeding the toll to over 132,000. It said 88 people died during the past 24 hours, raising the tally to 2,551. The ministry said over 50,000 patients have recovered so far across the country. It said the province of Punjab leads in the number of cases with over 50,000 infections, while the province of Sindh is behind with over 49,000 cases. North Korea has warned South Korea of regretful and painful times ahead, saying Pyongyang has lost its confidence in Seoul. In a statement, United Front Department Director Jang Kum-chol said Seoul has failed to back up its promises with tangible actions. Jang said Seoul did not deal with activists flying anti-Pyongyang leaflets into the north and legislate a ban on the practice as promised. He accused Seoul of lacking concern for the inter-Korean relations and urged South Korea to respect the 2018's Panmunjom Declaration. The Panmunjom Declaration calls for complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and improving inter-Korean relations. During the past weeks, Pyongyang has strongly protested the leaflet campaigns and threatened stern measures that could affect inter-Korean relations. China has rejected a recent report by the UK criticizing Beijing's national security legislation for Hong Kong. The Foreign Ministry spokesperson said the city's affairs are China's internal matter in which no foreign entity has the right to interfere. While the Foreign Ministry's commissioner in Hong Kong said Britain seriously trampled on the principles of international law. The commissioner said China and Hong Kong governments reject the UK's interference. Earlier, London said any solution to the unrest in Hong Kong must come from the former colony itself and not from Beijing. In a biannual report on Hong Kong, Foreign Minister Dominic Raab said all sides must invest in dialogue and reconciliation. Beijing said the security law is aimed at tackling secession, terrorism and foreign interference in Hong Kong. In Lebanon, hundreds of people have taken to the streets across the country amid escalating protests as Beirut faces a collapse in its currency. Demonstrators in multiple Lebanese cities set fire to roadways and clashed with security forces in a second night of unrest. The depreciation of the Lebanese pound has plunged the country into its worst economic crisis in decades. Many Lebanese citizens who rely on hard savings have fallen into poverty. Earlier, President Michel Aoun said the central bank will begin injecting dollars into the market from Monday in order to strengthen the currency. Speaking at a cabinet session, Aoun said huge losses to the financial system should not be borne by depositors but by the government. In the U.S., the anti-racism demonstrations calling for justice system reform have entered their 18th consecutive day. Hundreds of protesters barricaded the Capitol Hill neighborhoods in Seattle. Seattle's Mayor Jenny Duncan has rejected President Donald Trump's suggestion to deploy the military to dispel protesters in the area. Meanwhile, Trump has called for an end to the use of chokehold that killed George Floyd in Minneapolis last month. But the president said employing the restraint would be understandable if a police officer is confronted with potentially lethal force. In New York, the state government has adopted a series of laws designed to put an end to police brutality against the minorities. New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo signed 10 laws, including a ban on chokeholds.
The New York State Legislature has quickly passed the most aggressive reforms in the nation. I'm going to sign those bills in a moment. 50A reforms, so there's transparency. We're banning chokeholds. Attorney General Special Prosecutor, ending false race-based 9/11 reports.
As protests against racial injustice continue across the world, artists have joined in to bring colors to the demonstrations. Artists are painting George Floyd's murals in tribute to the African American who died in the U.S. after a white police officer knelt on his neck. This report will tell you more.
Pakistani trucks are famous for their flamboyant appearance with elaborate patterns and murals known as truck art. In the country's southern port city of Karachi, the video of Floyd's custodial killing had a profound effect on the truck artist Haider Ali. Ali painted a mural of Floyd on the wall of his house as he says the incident left him disturbed and restless.
When I saw the video of George Floyd, I was thinking the cop will leave him the next moment. But then I saw they killed the poor man brutally. I stopped watching television and I came upstairs so I could not bear it watching anymore. The scene kept repeating in my mind and it was very cruel. Then I made this painting. I painted these candles and I made these flowers as a garland around his neck to pay him tribute.
Also in the Afghan city capital, artists painted a mural of Floyd on a blast wall, joining protests against police brutality and discrimination. The group behind the painting is Art Lords and views art as a tool for social change. They are known for painting murals with messages of peace and social justice on concrete blast walls in Kabul that were erected to ward off militant bombs. The residents of the city expressed the horrors of the incident.
I watched the incident online, and it was very painful. When the helpless man wanted to escape death, the police did not release him and cause his death. I also live in a country that has witnessed war for 40 years, a war in which discrimination is used.
At the Berlin Wall, a large portrait of Floyd is seen alongside spellings, "I can't breathe," words he repeated before dying. In the US, the UK, Syria, Palestine, and many more countries as well, artists have painted Floyd's murals with his last words.
France has called on the US authorities to lift sanctions against the employees of the International Criminal Court. In a statement, French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said the US decision risks putting into question the independence of the justice system. He said Washington's move is an attack on states that are party to the Rome Statute and a challenge to multilateralism. Meanwhile, Switzerland has also expressed regret over the US decision and called on Washington to lift the restrictions. The Swiss cabinet reaffirmed its support for the ICC as an independent body. Earlier, the US imposed sanctions against ICC employees involved in an investigation into whether American forces committed war crimes in Afghanistan. We're now taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news. Welcome back. In Libya, 2 people have been killed in a mine explosion in the capital, Tripoli. The government of National Accord says Khalifa Haftar's forces planted the mines before fleeing from the capital. In a statement, the army said mines exploded in a civilian settlement in the southern part of the capital. It said so far, 29 people have died in such explosions. Meanwhile, the GNA has claimed to find 3 additional mass graves in Tarhuna. The Justice Ministry said the area of the graves will be cordoned off for forensic investigation. Earlier, the government said 8 mass graves were found in areas previously controlled by Haftar's forces. The UN says tons of gold and other precious metals from Congo are being smuggled into supply chains through its eastern neighbors. A UN report has found that the gold production in the country continues to be systematically underreported. The UN group of experts found in its annual report that at least 1.1 tons of gold was smuggled out of Ituri province alone in 2019. The countries along Congo's eastern border have long been conduits for gold mined by artisanal miners. Germany's Federal Institute for Geosciences and Natural Resources has estimated that miners in Congo produce 15 to 22 tons of gold a year. India has reported its biggest single-day surge in COVID-19 cases as over 11,400 tested positive for the virus. The country has now become the world's 4th worst hit with over 308,000 infections. The health ministry said the countrywide death toll from the virus has reached nearly 8,900. It said major cities like Delhi, Mumbai and Chennai are badly affected. Earlier, the Supreme Court sought a report from Delhi authorities saying patients faced a horrendous situation in packed hospitals. The city needs at least 80,000 hospital beds by the end of next month, but currently has only 11,000. In Nepal, thousands of protesters have taken to the streets of Kathmandu against the government's response of COVID-19. Police arrested 10 people, including 7 foreigners, for holding demonstrations. Police said an estimated 1,000 people gathered in the capital to hold protest for the 3rd day. Protesters are demanding better quarantine facilities, more tests and transparency in the purchase of medical supplies to fight the virus. Nepal's government says it has spent about $89 million to fight the pandemic, but the activists insist this was not enough in a country of 30 million people. Brazil has excluded complaints of police violence from an annual human rights report, sparking allegations of a cover-up. The federal government's 2019 human rights report made no mention of the alleged incidents of police abuse. In a statement, the Human Rights Ministry said the information was left out due to technical reasons. The ministry said the information was to be disclosed at a later date after an in-depth study of the inconsistencies identified in its records. Critics accuse the government of omitting the information because of political and ideological choices. Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro has repeatedly called for police crackdowns on criminals, drugs, and gang violence. Brazil ranks among the world's deadliest countries with over 40,000 murders reported in 2019. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences says it is initiating a 5-year plan to promote diversity in the film industry. In a statement, the Academy said it will work with the Producers Guild of America to encourage equitable hiring practices on and off screen.
The Academy said the filmmakers will have to meet the inclusion guidelines in order for their works to be eligible for Oscars. The organization said the eligibility criteria will be finalized by July 31st, but the rules will not apply to films vying for the 2021 Oscars. The Academy responded in part by doubling the number of women and people of color in its invitation-only ranks. Still, by 2019, just 32% of its roughly 8,000 members were women and 16% were people of color. The Academy has been criticized for a lack of diversity in recent years, with the backlash peaking in 2015 with the Oscars So White hashtag. New members will be announced next month.
Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey says he will be ready to take action to help the UK economy crisis amid coronavirus pandemic. This comes after the figures showed the economy shrunk by 20.4% in April, the largest monthly contraction on record. Bailey said Britain is still very much in the middle of a pandemic, but the figure was in line with what the bank has expected. He said there are signs of the economy now beginning to come back to life as the government lifted some lockdown restrictions. The Office for National Statistics said April's historic fall affected all areas of activity as large parts of the economy remain shut to battle the pandemic. The contraction is 3 times greater than the decline seen during the 2008 economic downturn. UK's MPs claim that the British Airways treatment of staff during the coronavirus crisis is a national disgrace. A Transport Select Committee report accuses the airline of a calculated attempt to take advantage of the pandemic by cutting thousands of jobs. British Airways says it is doing all it can to keep the maximum number of jobs. The Transport Committee found that airline received nearly £35 million from the government as of 14th May, but furloughing 22,000 staff. The MPs also noted that at the end of 2019, the airline recorded profits after tax of £1.1 billion and had cash reserves of £2.6 billion. They said the airline's actions fell well below the standards expected from any employer. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.